Ma'am,
Ma'am, you need
you
to
need to
leave
leave
this
this
seat.
seat, now. The flight attendant's voice sliced through the steady hum of the engines. Imani Washington looked up. She was in her assigned seat, 2A, first class, a birthday gift from her father. She was an honors student, a future aerospace engineer, and she had done nothing wrong. But the woman in uniform didn't see a passenger. She saw a brown-skinned girl in a white leather seat. Eyes began to turn. A phone camera lifted. Someone whispered, "She doesn't belong here." The quiet luxury of first class turned into a courtroom in the sky. Judgment handed down before the plane even reached cruising altitude. And within minutes, the world would know about Flight 447, and the question that no one on board was brave enough to ask out loud: who gets to belong? The shift supervisor emerged from the galley like a queen surveying her domain. Deborah Collins had worked for Carter Airlines for 30 years. At 55, she carried herself with rigid posture, her silver blonde hair pulled into a bun so tight it seemed to lift her eyebrows. The Navy uniform fit perfectly, every crease sharp, every button polished. She wore her seniority like armor, and her pale blue eyes swept across the first-class cabin with practiced efficiency. Those eyes stopped on Alyssa. Deborah's eyebrows drew together. Her gaze traveled from the Nike sneakers, up the faded jeans, across the oversized hoodie, and landed on Alyssa's face. Too young, Deborah thought. Dressed like she'd rolled out of a dorm room, not like someone who belonged in a $3,000 seat. "Excuse me, sweetie," Deborah said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" Alyssa looked up, brown eyes wide. A smile spread across her face, the kind that came naturally to someone who hadn't learned to be suspicious of authority. "Yes, ma'am, I'm in 2A. This is my ticket." She held up her iPhone, the boarding pass displayed clearly. Deborah glanced at the phone but didn't lean in. Her eyes narrowed slightly, head tilting. "First class is usually, well, it's not typically for high school students traveling alone. Are you certain you didn't accidentally book economy? Easy mistake to make." Around them, passengers began to notice. A man in a Brooks Brothers suit lowered his newspaper. The woman in Chanel set down her magazine. Conversations quieted. Alyssa's smile faltered, but she maintained composure. "No, ma'am. My father booked this seat for me. It's definitely first class." "Your father?" Deborah repeated the words slowly, testing their weight. "And does your father often book first-class tickets for you?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implications Alyssa was only beginning to recognize. Her cheeks warmed. "This is a birthday gift, ma'am. I'm 17 today." "How nice." Deborah's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Well, I'll need to verify this with the gate agent. These mobile passes can be unreliable." Without waiting for response, Deborah turned and walked toward the galley, murmuring something to a younger brunette flight attendant who glanced toward Alyssa with uncertainty. Alyssa sat frozen, hands gripping the armrests. She could feel eyes on her. The businessman, the Chanel woman, others she couldn't see but whose attention burned like spotlight heat. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. This was supposed to be an adventure, a milestone. Instead, she felt small, questioned. Doubt crept in. Did she look out of place? Should she have dressed differently? But beneath the doubt, something harder stirred, a flame of indignation whispering, "You have every right to be here." Deborah returned with a handheld scanner and the younger attendant trailing behind. "I'm going to need to scan your boarding pass again," she announced, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, "just to make absolutely certain everything is in order." It wasn't a request. It was a declaration of authority. And as Deborah reached for Alyssa's phone, her pale blue eyes gleamed with something that looked almost like satisfaction. The seed had been planted. The first crack had appeared, and that tiny fissure was about to split wide open. 5 minutes passed, like molasses. Alyssa sat rigid in her seat, watching Deborah confer with the younger flight attendant near the galley. The supervisor's lips moved rapidly, her hands gesturing toward Alyssa with sharp motions. The younger woman nodded, caught between obedience and visible discomfort. When Deborah returned, she brought reinforcement. Behind her walked a man in his early 40s wearing the same Navy uniform, but with additional gold stripes marking him as senior crew. His name tag read, Marcus Lead Purser. His face was set in professional neutrality, but his eyes held the weariness of someone who dealt with passenger disputes too many times. "Miss," Deborah began, her voice stripped of false sweetness, "I'm going to need to see your identification." Alyssa blinked. "My ID? But I already showed my boarding pass." "Standard security protocol," Marcus interjected, "especially for unaccompanied minors in premium cabins." The businessman with the Wall Street Journal was no longer pretending to read. The Chanel woman had her phone out. An elderly couple across the aisle exchanged glances, their faces creased with something between concern and disapproval. Alyssa's hands trembled as she pulled out her wallet, extracting her driver's license, still fresh, issued 3 months ago. She handed it to Deborah. The supervisor examined it with the scrutiny of a Secret Service agent checking counterfeits. She tilted it back and forth, ran her thumb across the surface, squinted at the hologram. Marcus leaned in, scanning the details. "Alyssa Marie Carter," Deborah read aloud. "Born October 8th, 2007. She looked up, pale eyes boring into Alyssa's. "And the ticket is under what name?" "A. Carter," Alyssa replied, her voice quieter now. "My father always books under initials for security." "Security," Deborah repeated with barely concealed skepticism. She handed the ID to Marcus, who scanned it with a device that beeped twice. "And this father of yours, what's his full name? I'll need to verify the credit card used for purchase." The question landed like a slap. The elderly woman across the aisle shook her head slowly. A younger black passenger in business casual leaned forward, his jaw tightening. "Jonathan Carter," Alyssa said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "He works in aviation." "Never volunteer information to people looking for reasons to doubt you," her father's words echoed in her mind. "Works in aviation," Deborah echoed, her lips curling. "How convenient. Employee discounts on these expensive seats?" "Miss Carter," Marcus cut in, "we need to contact the purchasing card holder directly. Do you have a number where we can reach your father?" Alyssa's mind raced. Her father had said this trip was hers, her chance to prove independence. Calling him now felt like defeat. "I can call him," she said finally, reaching for her phone. "Actually," Marcus interjected, "we'll need to step away from the boarding area. FAA regulations about phone usage during final boarding." It was a lie. Alyssa knew it. Passengers made calls all the time during boarding. But how could she argue against FAA regulations without confirming whatever narrative Deborah was constructing? "Here's what's going to happen," Deborah said, her voice low but carrying authority. "You're going to gather your belongings, and we're going to reseat you in economy until we verify your ticket. Once airborne and we confirm with your father, we can discuss moving you back." "But this is my seat," Alyssa protested, her voice cracking. "I have a valid ticket. You scanned it." "Technical scans can be fooled," Marcus said, though his tone suggested he didn't believe his own words. Her phone buzzed, a text from her father. "Hope you're enjoying the flight, baby girl. Remember, keep your head up, no matter what." The timing felt cosmic. Alyssa wanted to call him, to let his CEO voice shut this down. But something stopped her. This wasn't really about a ticket. This was about something deeper, something a phone call couldn't fix. Alyssa looked up at Deborah, meeting those pale blue eyes with her own dark ones. "I'm not moving. This is my seat. I'm not doing anything wrong." The cabin had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching. Deborah's expression hardened. Her hand moved to the radio at her waist. Then I'm afraid, she said, voice cold as winter steel. We have a problem. The radio crackled to life in Deborah's hand. Security to first class gate 23, she said, eyes never leaving Alyssa's face. We have an uncooperative passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions. The words hit like physical blows. Uncooperative. Refusing to comply. In an instant, Alyssa had been transformed from paying customer into problem. Someone who needed men with badges. Around the cabin, reactions splintered. The elderly couple moved to seats further back. The businessman muttered about delays. But the younger black passenger in business casual stood up. "Excuse me," he said, voice calm but firm. "I fly first class every week. I've never seen anyone get their ID checked like this. What exactly is the issue?" Deborah turned to him, professional mask slipping. "Sir, this doesn't concern you. Please return to your seat, or I'll have to ask security to speak with you as well." The threat was clear. Step out of line and you'll be next. And you'll be... The man hesitated, jaw working. His eyes met Alyssa's, a moment of silent solidarity. He sat back down, but his phone was out now, camera pointed discreetly toward the scene. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Deborah, maybe we should just verify the ticket number." "I've already contacted the gate," Deborah cut him off. "Until we get confirmation, this passenger needs to be relocated for the safety and comfort of other guests." Safety. Comfort. What safety was threatened by a 17-year-old sitting quietly? What comfort was disrupted? Alyssa felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she reached for her phone, fingers moving with deliberate calm. "What are you doing?" Deborah demanded. "Documenting," Alyssa said quietly. "You said I need to verify with my father. I'm contacting him. That's what you wanted, right?" "Dad, they're calling security on me. They don't believe this is my seat. I showed them everything. They're saying I have to move to economy or get off the plane. I need you." She hit send and looked back at Deborah. "He's probably in a meeting, but he'll see it soon." Something flickered across Deborah's face. Uncertainty. But she'd committed now, called security, made this public. Backing down would mean admitting error. "Put the phone away," Deborah ordered. "You can make calls after you've been reseated. I'm texting, not calling, and I'm not violating any regulations." Alyssa's voice was steady now, fueled by growing anger. "You're the one who asked me to contact my father. I'm doing exactly what you instructed." Two airport security officers appeared. A middle-aged man and a younger woman, both in Navy uniforms with gold badges. Their expressions were neutral, professional. "Officers," Deborah began, voice shifting to weary patience. "This passenger is refusing to comply with crew instructions. She's claiming a first-class ticket, but we have reason to believe there may be an issue. When we asked her to temporarily relocate while we verify, she became confrontational." Confrontational. Another brick in the wall. "That's not true," Alyssa said, looking directly at the officers. "I showed them my boarding pass. I showed them my ID. Everything matches. They scanned it. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't refused anything except moving out of a seat that's legally mine." The male officer looked at Marcus. "Did her boarding pass scan properly?" Marcus hesitated. "Yes. And does the ID match the name on the ticket?" "The ticket is under initials. A. Carter. Her ID says Alyssa Carter, so technically yes, but then what's the issue?" Deborah stepped forward, voice dropping conspiratorially. "Look, we get kids all the time trying to use their parents' credit cards without permission. She claims it's her father, but she can't produce him, and she's dressed like..." Deborah's hand waved vaguely toward Alyssa's outfit. "First-class passengers usually present a certain profile." There it was, laid bare, profile. The word hung in the air like smoke from a gun. Alyssa felt her phone buzz. Her father. "Don't worry, baby. I'm handling it. Don't let them see you scared." But she was scared. because this wasn't about tickets. This was about power and who got to wield it. The male officer asked to see Alyssa's booking confirmation. She pulled up her email, showed him. "This seems straightforward," he said to Deborah. "Email confirmations can be fabricated," Deborah countered. "I've been doing this for 30 years. I know the games people play." "Games," Alyssa repeated, the word bitter. "What game am I playing? Sitting in my assigned seat. What exactly have I done wrong?" Her voice rose slightly, fueled by frustration and injustice. Deborah seized on it. "You see? Hostile, aggressive. This is exactly what I'm talking about." "These protocols," Alyssa said quietly, "seem to only target certain people. But I wonder, do you know who you're really dealing with here?" It wasn't a threat. It was a genuine question about whether Deborah had any idea how badly she'd miscalculated. Deborah's eyes narrowed. "Is that supposed to intimidate me? Because, little girl, I've dealt with passengers who think they're important before. On this plane, I'm the authority. Not you. Not your allegedly wealthy father. Me." The mask had fully slipped. This was about power. Alyssa's phone buzzed again. "I see you, baby." 2 minutes. A small smile touched Alyssa's lips, quiet, knowing. Her father was here, close enough to see this entire spectacle. Deborah saw the smile and misread it. "You think this is funny? Officer, I'm formally requesting this passenger be removed." The radio on Marcus's hip crackled. "This is Captain Hayes. Marcus, Deborah, I need you both on the flight deck immediately. We have a situation." Deborah froze. "Captain, we're dealing with a security issue. Now." The captain's voice cut through. "Both of you, right now." Marcus moved immediately. Deborah followed slowly, but before she left, she turned back to Alyssa. "Don't think this is over," she said quietly. "Girls like you need to learn there are consequences for trying to be something you're not." Then she disappeared into the forward cabin, leaving Alyssa with 2 security officers and a plane load of witnesses. The female officer let out a slow breath. "Kid, for what it's worth, you handled that with more grace than most adults would have." Alyssa nodded, not trusting herself to speak. 2 minutes, he'd said. The reckoning was about to begin. The cockpit door opened, and Marcus emerged first, his face drained of color. Behind him, Deborah walked with stiff gait, chin lifted, shoulders squared. Whatever she'd been told, she wasn't ready to accept it. "Miss Carter," Marcus began, voice unsteady, "there's been a—" "I'd like to speak with the passenger directly," a new voice interrupted. Every head turned toward the cockpit doorway. A tall man stepped through, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that fit perfectly. His skin was dark. Closely cropped hair touched with gray at the temples. Gold-rimmed glasses caught the cabin light. He moved with certainty, the certainty of someone who knew exactly who he was and what he was worth. But what caught attention wasn't the suit. It was the way the captain himself followed 2 steps behind, and the way Marcus immediately stepped aside. Alyssa's heart hammered. Her father was here. Jonathan Carter had come. But she saw he wasn't here as her father, not yet. He was here as CEO Carter, the man who'd built a regional airline into a national powerhouse. "Deborah Collins," he said, voice quiet but carrying judgment. 30 years with this company, exemplary record, multiple commendations." He paused. "Until today." Deborah's defiance flickered. "Sir, I was simply following protocol." "Protocol," Jonathan interrupted, the word sharp as a blade. "Let me tell you what I just watched on cabin surveillance. I saw you question a passenger with a valid ticket. I saw you demand identification that was provided. I saw you call security on a minor who'd committed no offense except failing to meet your personal expectations of what a first-class passenger should look like." He stepped closer. Deborah stepped back. What I saw was a 30-year employee engaging in the exact behavior we've spent millions training staff to avoid: implicit bias, racial profiling, abuse of authority. I was protecting, Deborah started. Of what? Jonathan's voice rose slightly. The integrity of a cabin where a black teenager in casual clothes couldn't possibly afford a seat? The integrity of your own assumptions? The cabin went completely silent. Sir, Marcus interjected carefully, if I may, Deborah was concerned about potential credit card fraud. For what? Jonathan turned to him. For young people to travel first class? For black families to have disposable income? For a father to buy his daughter a birthday present? Marcus fell silent. Jonathan held up his phone. I have complete audio and video from this cabin. Every word, every gesture, every microaggression. He looked at Deborah. Tell me, Ms. Collins, how many other passengers did you ask to verify tickets today? How many IDs did you scrutinize? Deborah's mouth opened and closed. Passengers were pulling out phones. The young black man who'd defended Alyssa was openly recording. That's what I thought, Jonathan said. 0 other passengers. Just my daughter. A ripple went through the cabin. Murmurs started, growing. Your daughter? Deborah's voice was barely a whisper. You're Jonathan Carter. I'm Jonathan Carter, CEO of Carter Airlines, the name on every paycheck you've received for 30 years, the signature on every policy manual that explicitly forbids exactly what you just did. An older white woman in the 3rd row stood. I'd like to say something. I watched this entire thing. That young woman was polite, cooperative, patient. She showed every document requested, and this flight attendant treated her like a criminal. Thank you, Jonathan said quietly. A young woman stood. I recorded part of it. I can send it if you need it. Then the young black man stood. I knew exactly what was happening because it's happened to me. I sat down because I was afraid of making it worse for her. But I should have stood up. You did stand up, Alyssa said, voice hoarse. You spoke when you could have stayed silent. That mattered. The man nodded and sat back down. Deborah realized the magnitude. This wasn't just a complaint. This was about her career, her legacy, everything. Mr. Carter, she said, desperate, I made a mistake. I see that now, but I've given 30 years to this company. Surely that counts for something. We can resolve this quietly. Quietly, Jonathan repeated, something dangerous in his eyes. You want to handle this quietly, the way these things are always handled quietly, swept under rugs, while the pattern continues. He turned to address the entire cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption, but I want you all to bear witness to what happened here today, because this is exactly the behavior Carter Airlines will no longer tolerate. Not quietly, not privately, not ever. He opened his email, fingers moving rapidly. I'm sending a message right now to our Chief of HR, General Counsel, and Executive Board. I'm attaching surveillance footage, and I'm recommending immediate termination of Ms. Collins, pending full investigation into whether this represents a pattern. You can't, Deborah started, voice breaking. I have rights. I have a union. You do, and they'll represent you through the process. But Ms. Collins, let me be clear, what you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice to see a black child in a hoodie and assume criminality, a choice to wield authority as a weapon, a choice to humiliate my daughter in front of strangers. His voice dropped, became almost conversational, which made it more frightening. I've spent my career building this company with one principle. Everyone deserves dignity. From passengers in economy to executives in boardrooms, everyone, and you violated that principle in the most public, shameful way possible. Captain Hayes stepped forward. Sir, we're 15 minutes behind schedule. Cancel this flight, Jonathan said immediately. Deplane everyone. Rebook them on the next available Carter flight. Any class, no charge. Hotel vouchers for anyone who needs accommodation. meal vouchers for everyone, and a formal apology from me, personally, to every passenger. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Marcus looked stricken. Sir, that's going to cost. I don't care what it costs. This flight doesn't take off until every person involved has been properly interviewed and every passenger has been made whole. He turned to the security officers. Officers, thank you for your professionalism. I need you to escort Ms. Collins off this aircraft. She's no longer employed by Carter Airlines. The female officer nodded. Sir, we'll need HR to confirm. Jonathan held up his phone, showing an email chain. Already done. Effective immediately. Deborah made a sound, half sob, half protest. But Jonathan's expression didn't soften. You had every opportunity to de-escalate, every chance to show mercy, to exercise judgment, to treat a child with kindness. Instead, you chose cruelty. You chose power. Now you live with the consequences. The officers moved toward Deborah. She looked around wildly for an ally. But the cabin remained silent. Even Marcus couldn't meet her eyes. As the officers guided her toward the exit, Deborah stopped in front of Alyssa. For a moment, their eyes met. I'm sorry, Deborah whispered. Alyssa looked at her for a long moment, then quietly, I'm sorry too. Sorry that this is who you are. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. And somehow, that was worse than anger. Deborah was led away, her uniform still crisp, her bun still perfect, but her career in ruins. Jonathan stood very still, jaw tight, hands clenched. Then he turned to his daughter, and in that moment, he wasn't CEO Carter anymore. He was just a father. Come here, baby, he said softly. Alyssa stood on shaking legs and walked into her father's arms. And finally, she let herself cry. The embrace lasted only seconds. When Jonathan pulled back, he kept his hands on Alyssa's shoulders, searching her face. Did she touch you? He asked quietly. Alyssa shook her head. No, they just made me feel like I didn't belong. Something flickered across Jonathan's face, pain mixed with old anger. You belong anywhere you choose to be. Don't ever let anyone make you doubt that. He straightened, turning to the cabin. Captain Hayes approached with a tablet. Sir, we're deplaning everyone now. Good. I want every passenger to receive a personal call from me within 48 hours. Real apologies. Hayes hesitated. The media is already picking this up. Someone posted video. Jonathan nodded grimly. Get me PR. We're getting ahead of this. Marcus stood nearby, stricken. Mr. Carter, I want to apologize. You saw what was happening and enabled it. Jonathan cut him off. That makes you complicit. He scrolled his phone. Marcus Rodriguez, 8 years with Carter. You're not fired, but you are suspended, 2 weeks unpaid, mandatory bias training before you return. I understand. Thank you, sir. Don't apologize to me, Jonathan said, nodding toward Alyssa. Apologize to her. Marcus turned to Alyssa. I'm sorry. You deserve better. I should have stood up for you. Alyssa just nodded. The young black man approached. Mr. Carter? James Mitchell. I recorded what happened. I want you to have it. He glanced at Alyssa. And I'm sorry I didn't do more. You spoke up when you could have stayed silent, Jonathan said. That took courage. Jonathan's phone buzzed. He stepped away. When he returned, his expression was dark. That was HR. Deborah filed a wrongful termination complaint, claiming emotional distress. She's the victim now? Someone gasped. That's how it works, Jonathan said grimly. But I have surveillance of 30 other flights she worked. We're reviewing every one. If this was a pattern, we'll find it. He opened Twitter, typed rapidly, then showed Alyssa. Today, my 17-year-old daughter was racially profiled on one of our own flights. I witnessed it. I ended it. But this isn't about one incident. It's about a system that allows bias to flourish. Starting today, Carter Airlines commits to zero tolerance. Details to follow. JC. He hit post. Within seconds, replies flooded in. "Dad," Alyssa said softly, "this is going to be everywhere." "I know, and that's how it should be." Captain Hayes returned. "Sir, news crews are requesting comment. And your wife is calling." Jonathan's eyes widened. Alyssa's phone rang simultaneously. "Mom!" They answered together. Alyssa heard her mother's voice, tight with fear and fury. "Alyssa Marie Carter, are you okay? Your father's post—" "What happened?" "Mom, I'm fine. Dad's here. It's handled." "Handled?" "Baby, you were racially profiled on your birthday." "I know, Mom, but I'm okay. And something bigger is happening now." Pause, then quieter. "Put your father on." While her parents talked, Alyssa looked around the transformed cabin. This space had become a catalyst. Jonathan finished his call. "Your mother says she loves you, she's proud of you, and we're both grounded for not telling her immediately." Despite everything, Alyssa smiled. "Both of us? Apparently, I should have called her first." He shrugged. "She's not wrong." He looked around. "Okay. Alyssa and I give a brief statement to the press. Together, if you're comfortable." Alyssa nodded. "Then we go home. No LA trip today." "Dad, no," Alyssa protested. "I don't want her to take that from me, too." Jonathan considered, then nodded. "Okay, we fly together tomorrow, first class. Anyone who has a problem can take it up with me personally." He raised his voice. "Thank you for your patience today. What you documented will help ensure this never happens again." As people filed out, many stopped to hug Alyssa, to shake Jonathan's hand, to promise support. Jonathan put his arm around Alyssa's shoulders. "Ready?" "Ready," she confirmed. Together, they walked toward the exit, toward the cameras that awaited. But they walked together, and that made all the difference. The press conference lasted 12 minutes. Jonathan stood at a hastily arranged podium, Alyssa seated beside him, cameras flashing. "At approximately 2:47 p.m. today," he began, "my daughter was subjected to racial profiling by a senior Carter Airlines employee. Based on surveillance footage and witness testimony, I terminated the employee responsible, effective immediately." A reporter shouted, "Critics might say you only acted because she's your daughter." "They'd be right to ask," Jonathan interrupted. "Yes, being my daughter gave Alyssa visibility others don't have. That's systemic inequality. So I'm using that privilege to create accountability for everyone." He outlined new policies, independent hotline, mandatory bias training, external audits. 48 hours later, the full weight of consequences became clear. Deborah Collins' wrongful termination lawsuit was dismissed within a week. The surveillance footage was devastating. Audio captured comments made afterward. "These people always think they're entitled to things they can't afford." The union declined to represent her. Her case crumbled. But the real collapse came from social media. First class. While Black trended for 3 days, passengers from Deborah's previous flights came forward. A Black businessman asked to prove his ticket wasn't stolen. A Latina doctor questioned about her credit card. One by one, stories emerged. A pattern 30 years in the making, finally visible. Carter Airlines' legal team found 17 formal complaints against Deborah, all dismissed as customer service issues. The consequences rippled outward. Marcus completed his suspension and requested transfer to training development to help design the new anti-discrimination curriculum. Ashley became the first to use the new hotline. That supervisor was terminated. Ashley received a commendation. 3 other airlines adopted similar policies within 6 months. For Deborah Collins, the fall was absolute. Her name became synonymous with the behavior the industry was eliminating. Her social media went dark after harassment became unbearable. She released one statement: "I made errors in judgment that I deeply regret. I am seeking counseling." The reaction was mixed. Alyssa read the statement alone 3 weeks later. She felt complicated, not satisfied, just tired. Her mother found her there. "How are you doing, baby?" I don't know, Alyssa admitted. People call Deborah a monster, but I don't think she is. I think she's a person who was wrong for a long time, and nobody made her stop. That's very wise. If she's a monster, this was about one bad person. But if she's a person, it's about a system that let her be that way for 30 years. And which do you think it is? The system, Alyssa said without hesitation. It's always the system. 2 months later, Alyssa received a package with a handwritten letter from the older woman who'd spoken up. Dear Alyssa, I've been thinking about my own complicity. I stayed silent for so long because it was easier. Your courage changed something in me. I've since reported 3 incidents, filed complaints at my company. This letter is to say thank you and to promise your pain won't be wasted. I'm paying attention now. Alyssa read it 3 times, then filed it with others arriving steadily. The anger had faded, replaced by determination. Deborah Collins had fallen. The system was beginning to crack, and Alyssa was learning that justice wasn't always satisfying. Sometimes it was just necessary. 6 months later, Alyssa stood on a stage at the National Civil Rights Conference. She'd almost said no. The spotlight felt heavy, but her father had said, "Your voice matters not because of what happened to you, but because of what you choose to do with it." Now, facing activists, students, and community leaders, she took a breath. I don't think I'm a hero. I think I'm someone who got lucky. Lucky my father had power. Lucky there were cameras. But luck isn't justice. Justice is what we build together. She told the story, not for sympathy, but for understanding. When Deborah Collins called security, she wasn't seeing me. She was seeing a stereotype. And the scariest part wasn't her bias, it was how normal it felt to everyone around her. Alyssa paused. People asked if I forgave her. I don't know. What I know is, Deborah lost her job. But the system that taught her it was okay, that system is still here. Real change doesn't happen in boardrooms. It happens in moments, when someone sees wrong and speaks up, when someone in power chooses accountability, when we decide dignity isn't something you earn, it's something you're born with. She looked into the cameras. To every young person told they don't belong, you do. Your presence is not a question. Your existence is not a problem. When people treat you like you're less than, remember, that's their limitation, not yours. Her voice softened. To the adults with power, do better. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. Every time you stay silent, you're teaching people like me that our dignity is negotiable, and it's not. She steadied herself. What happened to me happens every day to people who don't have CEO fathers or viral videos. I'm thinking about them, not for pity, but for possibility. That next time, someone will speak up. The room remained quiet. I don't know if I've forgiven Deborah, but I've forgiven myself for feeling scared, for doubting whether I belonged, because that's what bias does. It makes you question your worth. I refuse to carry that burden anymore. She looked out at the faces. So here's what I'm asking. Don't let my story be exceptional. Make it obsolete. Build a world where a black girl can sit in first class and the only thing remarkable is that she got a good deal. Gentle laughter rippled through the room. We can do this. Not just for me, but for everyone who comes after. That's not just responsibility. It's love. The room erupted. Applause, people on their feet, some crying, all connected. Backstage, her parents waited. They hugged her tight. I'm so proud of you, her mother whispered. You changed the conversation, her father added. Alyssa nodded. The anger had transformed into purpose, the pain into power. Not power from authority, but from truth-telling. This was the lesson no classroom could teach. Justice wasn't just punishment, it was transformation. And transformation started with refusing to accept that things had to stay the way they'd always been. The video of Alyssa's speech went viral within hours. Not explosive viral, but something quieter, sustained, shared in classrooms and boardrooms. People sat with it, discussed it, let it change them. 3 weeks later, Alyssa received an email from a 15-year-old in Atlanta kicked out of a boutique for looking suspicious. The girl had recorded it, reported it. The store apologized and fired the manager. I almost stayed quiet. But I remembered what you said, that staying quiet teaches them our dignity is negotiable. Thank you. That afternoon, Alyssa posted on social media for the first time since the incident. 6 months ago, I learned my dignity isn't up for debate. Today I'm asking, what will you do when you see someone else's dignity under attack? Will you record, speak up, refuse to look away? You don't need to be a CEO's daughter to make a difference. You just need to be brave enough to say, this is wrong, and I won't pretend I don't see it. Change starts with you. What will you choose? She added a photo from her speech. Head high, shoulders back, eyes clear. Comments flooded in. Thousands. Stories of staying silent and regretting it. Stories of speaking up and changing something. One comment from a flight attendant. I've worked in aviation 15 years. After watching what happened to you, I finally reported a colleague who'd been making racist comments for years. Investigation ongoing. Thank you for giving me courage. Alyssa screenshot it, sent it to her father. Progress. He replied, proud of you. Always. That evening, Alyssa thought about Deborah Collins. Not with anger anymore, not with satisfaction, but with sadness for all the years Deborah had lived unchecked, hurting people and never being stopped. But mostly, Alyssa thought about the future. A world where dignity was assumed, not proven. Where speaking up was safe and staying silent unthinkable. That world didn't exist yet, but it was closer than 6 months ago. She picked up her phone, added a final thought. P.S. I'm flying first class next week. Anyone want to guess if I'll get questioned? Here's my bet. I won't. Not because I'm the CEO's daughter, but because we made it harder for people like Deborah to get away with what she did. That's not luck. That's justice. And we built it together. Now let's keep building. She hit post, then closed her laptop. Outside, New York glittered with possibility. Somewhere, someone was being treated unfairly. And somewhere else, someone was finding courage to speak up. The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. But it had begun. And that, Alyssa thought, smiling despite everything, was enough for today.